Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Albert. In this show, I talk about technology, building a company as a CTO and co-founder, and have guests to discuss their roles in technology and entrepreneurship. Hello, everyone. I just had the great pleasure of sitting down with Rob Healy, who currently works at Ammeon. He is one of the founding members of the Agile-Lean Ireland conference, also known as ALI, which is also a meetup group. He is basically an expert in Agile and Lean methodologies. It's always great to sit down with him and discuss how to get better as a technologist and as a startup founder. Well, not just as a startup founder, but as a employee. So without further ado, here's the episode. I hope you enjoy.
Would you like me to introduce myself?
Please.
Good stuff. So I'm Rob Healy. I'm a mechanical engineer. From a long time ago, I started off my career working for software companies making fluid mechanics solutions for oil and gas, nuclear and Formula One teams. And from there, I kind of accidentally fell into doing work for localization, then doing work for telcos. And more and more that I worked in all the different industries in software, I just started to get addicted to the process side of things. I started to see patterns. Again, because I'm an engineer, I see the world in systems, right? And I started to see that the systems were common. And then Agile came along in my life, and followed by Lean in fairly quick succession now, to be fair. And I started to see how the two could be used to start driving efficiencies. So for the last year and a bit, maybe going on for 2 years now, I've been working with a company called Ammeon here in Dublin city centre to drive efficiencies and help other companies improve their processes to make things work better. We say better, faster and smarter.
Nice.
Yeah, there we go. That's the elevator pitch.
Thanks very much. So Rob and I worked together at Symantec for a while, and I'm very happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks, man.
I really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
So what about the Agile and Lean that kind of hooked you so early on?
So back in 2008, the first project I worked on, basically coming out of university, was a big old waterfall project. I was working for a nuclear industry, and I was working as a tester. And they hired mechanical engineers because the software was written by physicists and PhDs in engineering, and you had to make sure that lead couldn't turn into gold according to the software, right? The things made physical sense, that tea wouldn't heat up by itself.
Sure.
Those are genuine real tests that we used to run. So the first piece of software that we worked on, it was a 2-year release. And at the time, that was how waterfall worked, right? That you had 4 years worth of requirements and a 2-year release, and everyone walked around the building with huge big folders. And we spent a year or something like that writing test requirements, and then the developers at the same time were writing all their software, and then we released it, and we had an alpha release and a beta release and all the rest of it. And the software was released to nuclear industry standards, released to the customers, and the customers said, yeah, it's cool, but we're thinking of moving to your competitors. And we went, what do you mean? And they said, well, we knew it was perfect. It was perfect. They said, well, think about it, right? Your competitors are delivering now every few months. We can't wait for 2 years. One of the customers, we're a Formula One team. That's 2 full seasons. You have to go faster. So I was lucky enough that I was enthusiastic enough. I know I've changed. But back in the day, I was enthusiastic enough to jump on board to be in the pilot team to bring in Agile across this big Fortune 500 company. And drive it through on a brand new project. And it wasn't without its problems, and there was plenty of cynics and naysayers, but you could see from moving 2 years to delivering every 2 weeks Now, we were still using hardening sprints and some weird stuff like that. So we were only actually getting out to the customers every 3 months or so. But still, it was a sea change. And the software quality the software we were delivering went on to be what Red Bull used in their Formula One things.
Nice.
The laser swimsuit that won all the records in the Beijing Olympics was built using the software. Wow. And designed to be super efficient by Speedo. So you got an immediate feedback loop of how powerful this thing could be. And so then you just, at the time, like Agile was 7 years old, and I left that company and moved to a competitor because they were based in a better place for me in London. And they were equally trying to do Agile. But when you start to see how other organizations are doing it and missing out on the tricks of it, that's where you get hooked.
Yeah.
And that's where you can say simple changes can change, not just like profitability and keeping companies going, which is important, but equally given balance, work-life balance. Like in the first release that we worked on, because testing had been squeezed, as it always is in waterfall type processes, we were working through the night kind of territory and all the rest of it. Whereas now you're working in a sprint cycle, if you're working in Scrum, and because it's a regular cadence, there's no need to burn out people like that.
Yeah.
So you're actually looking after individuals as well as looking after companies.
Sure.
And it's a kind of a win-win, usually.
Yeah, no. And, some of those examples you gave there were a bit more about larger enterprises. And even as part of a startup, I've seen it hard to actually embrace some of that lean mindset. So we took a long time to get our first version out where we were actually basing decisions on user behaviors as opposed to user interviews. Now, we did a good job with the user interviews by making sure that our questions were very open-ended and describe your problem, not do you like our solution? Because if you ask somebody, do you like our solution? Everybody likes to please other people, other than the few arseholes out there. So you have to ask about the problem, and then near the end, you begin to describe how your solution fits in, and if that seems like it would fit in their life.
It's really hard for engineers to not jump to solutions.
Yeah.
It's not in our makeup,
No.
and it's much nicer to come into a quiet room and start coding. It's much more difficult to go out and listen to somebody and listen to their problems and understand it. It's something that we see again and again and again. Even when I'm looking at Agile teams, a lot of it, I do experiments, right? And they'll be setting themselves up. So it might be within an enterprise or it might be in a startup. But I do a thing where I get them to make any kind of competition. I'll have usually 2 teams playing off against each other. And you give them virtually no rules. Right, it might be moving ping pong balls or throwing paper airplanes or making paper snowflakes, any of those things. You give them virtually no rules, but a goal. And the first thing that groups of people do is set themselves in incredible red tape. Right? Don't go ask. So I would be open and say, I'm the customer in this world. I'm here, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at you, I'm ready to talk. And they will go in and completely sit in little groups and try to solve a problem without ever asking. Yeah. And it's something in humanity. I don't know if it's all people or just engineers, but yeah, it's definitely worth watching out for.
I totally relate. That's one of the things as you get older. If you pay attention to yourself, you've learned a lot of ways not to do things.
Yeah. Edison's, I haven't failed. I've just learned 10,000 ways it doesn't work.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm only at about 900, so I have a long way to go with things that don't work.
I understand. So with your new work with Ammeon, what would be one of the first things that the people that you go in to work with you wish that they had understood when they began before they needed your service, if that question makes sense?
No, it does. So every time I go in, I put up one word up on a board, or if it's a presentation, and the word is why, right? And I put it up there and I say, you need to know why you're here. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Where is it that you're trying to get to? But if you don't understand that, I can't help you. And it's back to what you were just saying a minute ago. We need to get down to the root of the problem, or what we perceive to be, and then we can move off that and build off it. And so some of my clients just don't know, particularly if they're very high-level execs that are far removed from the work. That they just, then it turns into a different question. You're asking, how does work here?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And what we have to do is, often in Lean they talk about the Gemba walk. It's taking these people who are often very decent, diligent people, but they've become, through time and through no fault of their own, removed from how work is working on the ground.
Yep. And
go down and walk them through how work flows through the organisation, and you get to see something just completely different. We had one client now last year that they called us in, and the management wanted to do value stream mapping and do that kind of process analysis. But they didn't want to, in their own words, disturb the guys who were doing work on the ground. So after about 3 weeks, we just went, I've been locked in a room doing mapping with no data. We just said, no, this is not going to work. You're never going to. What we have is a lovely theoretical model, but we've no, unless you go see for yourself, you know nothing. So it's really important. And that's back to what you're saying again. You got to get out of the building. You've got to go talk to people, right? And see what they're really saying and doing, and watch their behaviors.
That's, I've had a number of people at meetups and just through my profile and things ask me, how do I go and build this? And my very first thing now, not in the past, but now, is stop right there.
Dead right.
It's like they come asking a technologist, how do I build this technology? And it's so odd for me to say, don't yet. Wait. Go talk to people. Make sure that you're really solving the problem as the person with the problem sees it, not as you see it as an outsider. Now, unless you have that specific problem yourself and you're building something to solve your own problem, and you believe that there are more people, still go talk to more people.
Correct.
It seems to really be shocking to everyone, including me.
You could be lucky. And an awful lot of the cases that you see are people who are lucky, who paid attention to their own problem, solved that, and happened to find others. But for each one of those, there's millions that we've never heard about because they solved a tiny, tiny problem and everyone went, yeah, I don't care.
Well, the other thing is that they may not all be completely wrong. They may be so close, but they spent so much time and money building in isolation what they thought was the solution. That they've run out of energy, cash, time, and have to just go get a job to keep going, and are just torn apart because they invested so much in it, and they were so close that just a minor change by listening to users.
And this, I mean, that's definitely, and it's great, like that the startup community are paying attention to this. One of the things that I work with is internally within Ammeon. So we have like 150 odd engineers. And again, these are smart guys paying attention to problems and have ability to solve it. But it's the exact same problem that they have a great idea on what do you do about it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what is it? Kodak invented the digital camera, but didn't know what to do with it. Do you know, Xerox invented the mouse, but didn't know what to do with it. And there's an awful lot of the startup philosophy and the startup get out of the building and go ask questions is even more anathema to engineers working in companies, because they just, like I was saying with the putting a rule on themselves, they just go, I can't leave. Do you know, I feel like I can't possibly do that and go explore. So there's a bit of work with that, trying to help a bit of innovation too, and helping existing companies keep them growing.
How do you think engineers and middle managers who do see the value in going out and talking to the customers or users or whatever it is, how do you see that they can bring more evidence or have the courage to
by and large,
push.
Dave, what they have to do in companies, because they feel like, there's knowledge rights and, all the rest of it. But the group that help and are helping to smash down that barrier are the UX group. UX groups across, and so it depends company how well they're doing. But the UX philosophy and the lean UX side is actually bringing that lean startup mentality and bringing it into the enterprise. So those guys are extremely good at finding customers, just like, and getting out there and asking the right types of questions and translating between the internal people and the external people. So, like, that's Jeff Goethel's work was really good with that, and Jake Knapp's work with Sprint, which is from an Agilist perspective, the worst name he could have given that book in the world. But it's still an excellent book, and it gives a nice little tool set for how to get out there. And there's some companies in Dublin that are doing that right now and using those techniques to get out, go talk to actual customers, get real feedback, and try and bring it back to the engineers.
Yeah. So the Sprint book, would that best be described as a design sprint?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And in reality, everyone talks about design sprint, but they put the word sprint in it, and it causes no end of confusion.
Oh, absolutely.
With people who are looking for how to do Scrum, and then they will do a design sprint. Now, what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, for those that don't know, a design sprint is basically you take a week and bring all the people around your team that can deliver something and try to deliver a prototype within the week. So you start with ideation and figuring out what you're going to solve. Then you do a bit of design work, not necessarily high fidelity, finished, perfect design, but it's something you can put in someone's hands.
Yes.
And hand it to them and see what they do with it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and the back of it, from my perspective, where I'd be trying to talk to people like that, is it forgets about the next step. The only weakness to that book, and it's a tremendous book, just in case Jake is listening, it's an absolutely brilliant book, but it doesn't say how to take that idea and build it into epics, build it into stories, build it into tickets, however you want to work. There has to be a way to translate that knowledge you've got from the customer back into the people who will actually build the full high fidelity final product. And that's an interesting step that has to be thought about.
That's a really interesting point there about how to split it up, and that makes me think of something I had just written down a minute ago. So, startups are limited in funds and people, and possibly knowledge in what's required in Agile. Myself as a CTO, I've almost taken part of a Scrum Master PO role, and it's really hard. How can startups do the best work without those people? I mean, if you can hire them, you should, because trying to do development and guide the project forward it's a special skill set, and I don't have it. I can't be tactical and strategic at the same time, and you need to be basically 100% both.
Yeah.
I think I do a better job of facilitating the team, so that's more of the Scrum Master type of role, but way less of the PO. Our UX expert has a good bit of focus on individual elements of what the user demands. So from that perspective, he's a bit of a product owner, but not of the overall picture. How, do you see any ways that people in our type of position? Yeah,
definitely. So there's a couple of things to definitely try there. The Scrum Master is a really good starting point for this, right? So in Dublin now, there's three basic types of Scrum Masters. There's a Scrum Master as an Agile coach, which is the kind of the classically defined Scrum Master. Coach is the business, coach is the product owner, coach is the team, and so on. There's the Scrum Master who acts as a de facto project manager. These are people that are still command and control-esque. You still see them in big organizations trying to get stuff done, right? They do an awful lot of reporting and stuff. And then the last one is the Scrum Master, who's also a team member, a part-time Scrum Master. So in startups, you have no alternative. You have to use that kind of role, right? Then the next thing, the product owner. So one of my heroes is Mary Poppendick, the author of Lean Software Development. And she was in Dublin last year, and she was talking that she's actually not a fan of the product owner role at all. That she says is complete and total proxy, right? And when you think about it, she's absolutely right. If you can get out to the customer, and if the developers can get out to the customer, what the hell are you doing translating what they've just said? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just rewriting down the same words again. And,
wow.
And so she says, for smaller, lighter, if you can get the people out that can do the work to talk to the final customers, or enough of them, then you don't need a product owner to act as a proxy for the team. So with those two little tricks, that's how I'd be suggesting to startups. Right?
So I've got to grab my UX guy by the hand and drag him to a customer, and the two of us sit there and listen
and do that. So the purpose of the Scrum product owner, Scrum Master and team was it's a delegation technique without being command and control, right? You're empowering the team, and the Scrum Master and product owner are trying to solve their problems. But if in the startup world, you can fully empower the team by breaking down that barrier and using an internal coach to keep the conversations going and keep the flow of work going, right? And at the end of the day, for startup level, it's dealing with chaos. It's dealing with more chaos than Agile is really, and particularly Scrum is really happy with. Right? It's a survival level of chaos.
Yes.
Do you know
I do know what you mean.
So this is where Reese, with his logical jump of taking Agile and jumping into the startup, says you have to solve those small problems as fast as you can because you're staying alive.
Right.
You have to be able to pivot rapidly.
Right.
Right. You're not in the lub-dub of the cadence of Scrum or even the cycle time measurement of Kanban. Right. Those are more stable type flows. You're in a purely chaotic flow, and you're trying to get to them. That's what you're trying to do: grow and be able to support and have the confidence that you can delegate out to individual teams.
Right. So that's Eric Reese from Lean Startup.
From Lean Startup. Yeah. And if in the early stages, just keep it tight. Give as few people as possible, right? Because that's your overhead, which is burning down your runway. Get out in front of the customer insofar as you can, right? And then take that learning and try and get back to that customer and get cash flowing, which is all important. You know, and that's keeping people going and stuff.
And be ruthless with yourself in making sure that you're absolutely delivering the least amount that your users will accept. Even if that group of users is small. You're probably better off with 10 users who are contacting you every day about something than 1,000 users who couldn't care less. And then Dave, so it's really interesting pivot. So my clients, some of them are really small startups at a very infantile level, and with them I'd be just talking about Lean Canvas, the model, the cheap, and sometimes just going, don't do that. One of my clients, all his work is built out of networking, and he was about to spend a fortune building a website. And I said, for whom? Who's ever going to use this? And he said, well, I needed to compete with some of these big boys. But I said, but you're targeting a different market, right? Oh yeah. So there you go. You just saved yourself the cost of all that web design and all the rest of it, hosting, maintenance, all the time it would take him. Focus on the thing that to do. But then some of my other clients, one of them has grown from a 6-person company to a 30-person company. And the difficulty for that group was they were still in what you were describing, the tiny MVP stage. And they were still in that some of their engineers were doing such and such in the morning and marketing in the afternoon and development and testing and all the rest of it. And it was only causing absolute chaos and frustration amongst the teams who were going, well, my role is to be a tester.
right?
Yeah.
And my role is to be developer and whatnot. Your role is to be one of the architects of the whole thing. So stop disturbing us all.
Yeah.
And then getting them out of that mindset and focusing on the bigger thing. And the last thing I'd caution, it's great for startups to focus on the minimum viable product. We have a curse in this country that we get to local maxima, and the local maxima of Irish startups tends to be the UK market, right? That we grow to move out of Ireland, which is 4 million people, to the UK, which is 60 million, and stop.
Yeah.
And think, yay, we won. Everything is hunky-dory. And then possibly sell at that stage. And that's what goes on classically.
Sure.
But you listen and watch American startups, and they don't think like that. They think, we've got 400 million people here-ish.
Yeah.
And after that, it's the world.
Exactly.
It's only a small jump to go to 8 billion.
Well, that's seriously. I mean, the way the Asia is growing, it's still developing in a lot of areas, but there's still growth there.
Yes.
The older technologies, say older Android phones, are becoming super relevant there. So, don't ignore them just because it doesn't seem flashy and new and fancy. Yes. I mean, there's so much value you could get by considering customers from any country.
Yeah, yeah. I do. A lot of my work is supported by Enterprise Ireland and the IDA. And so they're doing, both of those groups are doing an awful lot more to try and break the mindset away from Britain.
Yep.
With what's going on today in Britain, we don't know what Brexit will bring.
Exactly.
And whether that market will be closed or to what degree there'll be tariffs imposed across the board. So they're moving far more to East Asia and to China and to huge markets. And I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Nice. You brought up Mary Poppendick. Can you tell me what she was here for last year? But for the listeners, I already know.
Yeah. Mary is a hero of mine, and I think she's absolutely brilliant. She's a lovely, lovely lady, and there was a bit of an incident when we brought her over for a meetup with Agile-Lean Ireland, and she gave a spectacular presentation on the PO as a proxy. And then she went down to the pub to work with all of us. Like, she's amazing. I met her at the airport, and the taxi ride between Dublin Airport and her hotel, she'd asked me how I was getting on and was solving my clients' problems for me.
Wow.
Just a genius.
Nice.
And so, but she went to the pub and she was solving a load of people's problems for them. And she said, I don't know what her age is, but I guess she's in her 70s, I guess. I might get into awful trouble with Mary. but herself and her husband Tommy, she said, Rob, we'd like to go back to the hotel, please. Can you book us a cab? So myself and our friend Anto, we won't give his surname. So we said we'd catch a train, so we jump into the cab too. And we sat into the car, and I said, Mary, would you like to sit in the front seat? She said, no, I'll sit in with Tom. So I jumped into the front seat, and little did I know the back door was a slidey door.
Oh.
So Mary put her hand on the pillar of the door just as I was slamming the front door. Oh
my goodness.
And so she said, they say don't ever meet your heroes, and in my case it was never meet your fans.
Actually, I didn't know that part.
Did you not know that
No,
story?
I was
thought
just
that's what you were getting at.
No, I was just leading in so you could talk about Ali a little bit.
Oh, right. So she was very, very good about it, even though I nearly broke her hand and we thought we would have to bring her to hospital. But she is coming back for Agile-Lean Ireland, the meetup group that myself and a few of our friends, myself and Dave's friends, for the people that are listening, have organised since 2015. And we have a conference. We have the 3rd annual conference coming up this April, and Mary is one of the keynote speakers on it.
Yeah, it's a great conference. I was at the first one and the second one, and I plan to be at the third one.
Yeah, we're just waiting for you to put in your call for speakers, so that.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Good stuff. We need more startups talking about how to do this.
I might could do a small session. I wouldn't want to do a big one because I wouldn't feel like I had the right the right content for the majority of the audience, because it seems that the majority of your audience at Ali is more business facing and less technical.
So it was really interesting, Dave. That's an excellent question. The first year we got, because of the keynotes, we're finding an awful lot that affects how people come. So the first year we had Woody Zool and talking about mob programming.
That was great.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I got to witness mob programming because he ran a workshop in Ammeon the day before, and we had people coming in from all different companies, and having people standing up and moving around and delivering software with only taking 15 minutes to rotate. Amazing. Because of him, we got a large number of developers coming in to learn from him, right? There was a significant number. Our regular community that come to the meetups would be Scrum Masters and Product Owners, Agile coaches. Yeah. That's the regular group. The second year, you're absolutely right. Then our keynotes last year, there was Jeff Goldself, was our keynote, and Henrik Nyberg. And because Jeff is far more business focused and Henrik is just one of the best agile coaches on the planet, it was heavily agile and then a lot of business, because Jeff brought that side. Yeah. And we've watched this, right? So we've built this entire meetup community and the conference using lean startup principles that we build, measure, learn. And because of that learning and the patterns that we've seen, this year we've made a conscientious effort for our keynotes to be spread across development, testing, business side of things, definitely agile, because that's feeding where we've come from, lean in general with Mary Poppendick, so that we're bringing a broader community. And that was definitely the goal this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys should definitely try to speak, even if they're just lightning talks, at some of the technical meetups. Yeah. Just so that I know that us developer types can keep our heads down a little too much and only go looking for the things that we know to go looking for. Yeah. So something like Ali, Agile-Lean Ireland, may seem like it's a bit out of our realm of interest, where it's not. It's 100% something we should pay attention to.
Agile was written by software developers.
Oh absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean? Absolutely. And there's people that right now in software development that criticize it, and to degrees rightly, that some of the manifestations of it and the implementations of it have been horrific, worse than waterfall. Yeah. But it is still, the purpose of it, its philosophy, is still for the people who are doing the work to solve their problems. Yep. And for the development community to not be paying attention for this support for exactly that. Yep. It's trying to look after the people who are doing the work. Yeah. Right? Always. That is its goal and Ali's goal. So you're absolutely right. We need to be reaching out and talking the language of the people who are doing work. You know? And it's not even like, one of the great people that we've got coming in now is Agile HR. And it's revolutionary. It's huge in the United States, but we've got a guy called Kevin MP from Work Matters who's going to do a workshop before the conference here. Well, we hope, anyways. I hope he gets signed up now. But the reason being is very simple. No one in Agile would do a retrospective. You wouldn't wait for more than a month to do a retrospective. It's not right. You know, there's something failing if you're not looking at how you're working. However, you're perfectly happy to do an annual retrospective on your performance and pay.
That is so funny. That is exactly something that I've always had trouble with. I thought HR is one of the most important things. Yes. But the way it's done is one of the least important things. Yes. It's keeping the business from being sued. Yes. And that's all it is. Yeah. But if you're not doing regular check-ins. Yes. Which, yes, team, I do need to schedule more one-on-ones, and I'm very sorry about that. But please talk to me anytime you need to. But yes, you need to make sure that the people know where they are. Otherwise, they start to drift. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but you start to drift away, and you need that personal connection with the company, your manager, to make sure that everybody is working in the same direction.
And it's very, very new to me. So I'm still reading the books on it and all the rest of it. There's P.M. Morgan, I think, or something like that. It has the Agile HR book, and I must lend it to you.
Oh, yeah.
You'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's taking Agile principles and just applying it to HR. And it's just such a logical place, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
Because so much of HR and recruitment is process-focused. Quite simply process-focused. Often, just like you're saying, to not be sued, documented process-focused. But it should be learning. If an interview technique failed, why not retrospect on it and improve it and get better quality candidates and keep learning? And it's brilliant in its simplicity, and you just start to ask the question, well, where else?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we be bringing this out to further groups?
Definitely.
So one of my clients, I was in with them yesterday, and the development team, and they were doing well by themselves, but they just wanted a bit of coaching to make sure that what they're doing made sense. They wanted outside eyes. And I met the CEO because they're still just beyond startup, right? They're ticking away. And I met the CEO, and I introduced myself and I said, I'm helping your development team. And he said, oh, brilliant. Whatever you did must have worked, because there's definite improvements in their productivity. And then they said, you should talk to our marketing team. They might enjoy that visualization of work, retrospection, seeing what's working, learning faster, and all the rest of it. Well, why not marketing?
Yeah.
Why not sales? Why not all these groups?
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, really, that I think everybody tries to be perfect from the beginning way too much.
Yeah.
I was guilty of that with this podcast. I went a year without posting an episode because I was trying to make it perfect, and I've given up on that, and I'm just trying to make it good.
Yeah.
And we've started within our own team related to our product, trying to get it good enough for now. We've even got a GEFN in our Slack channel.
Yeah.
Yep, that's GEFN, good enough for now, which means that we know it's not perfect, but it delivers the value. Yeah. It can let us understand, do the users like this? Do they not like it? Is it that they don't like it because it's not fully fleshed out enough? So, yeah, more experimentation in all areas of life.
Yeah.
Other than maybe hard drugs, but I still don't know about that one.
Yeah. I got married off a Kanban board.
I remember that.
Yeah. And because it's like, my wife's a teacher, but because she just liked the visualization and the fact that they weren't tripping over each other.
Yep.
And I worked with a group in the civil service, guys that they know exactly when they're going to be retiring. They know to the day how far away, 40 years they are. And they were telling me that they had basically invented Kanban by accident. Well, certainly they'd invented Scrum because they used a form of visualization of their work. And they had a daily morning meeting that they called the Daily Grumble, that talked about the stuff they were doing yesterday, the stuff they're doing today, and what they needed to escalate to management. Right? They'd invented the 3 questions by accident.
That's fantastic.
Because it solved a problem, right? And I was teaching grads last week in our grad program in Ammeon, and I was saying to them, it's amazing, Dave. It's amazing. The universities are all teaching Agile. We learned it out in the field, right? Because we weren't taught it. But the variation in the teaching that's going on in our universities in Ireland is shocking, terrible, and some of them are, you are agile if you have this tool kind of mindset, and it was astonishing. But just getting them to say, this is not coming from academia, this is learning by doing and by practicing and keeping focused on that. It matters, So that's, you keep going, keep pursuing perfection and getting it wrong.
That's exactly it. Is that I'm never satisfied, but that doesn't mean I'm stressed out about not being there yet. Nothing will ever be good enough. It's always good enough for now, because there's always improvements you can make. There's always new features you can add, or one of the things many people forget, features you can remove.
Yes. Yeah. So important.
Yeah.
It's one of my clients, they did a big study, and I try and embed this with an awful lot of my clients, that they feel disconnected. The engineers feel disconnected from the business and don't know whether it's adding value. And I say, well, you have tools, right? It depends on the technology they're working on. But if you control the software, is there no metrics that you can be gathering if you're a cloud-based software or web-based software? Or it doesn't really matter. There's always some way that they can put in metrics, and you can own those metrics. And you can send them on to the business, so that they're not just coming from a net promoter score that's coming in from marketing. So you can often see from the use of how web pages work. A lovely example is some people who are doing help documentation, right? Nobody ever reads the help for the crack. Maybe you do, Dave, but you're really smart. But so what we did was we put in Google Analytics. We, as opposed to shipping out PDFs, we've hosted it online, stuck in Google Analytics before it, and could stop support calls and start building features as a result, because you could track the journey through the help. Again, nobody's reading it, so the pages that were being read were weaker features, and where they were stopping and picking up the phone to support, you had to immediately solve the help, because it was failing them, it was driving them into support. And then more than that, start queuing up a feature to be built, because to hell with calling support, that's still expensive. You want to, that's the next feature to be built.
That's fantastic.
To be solved. And that costs virtually nothing. In fact, they saved money by not shipping PDFs and building it and spending all that time. And you just take a direct feedback from a very, very relevant live source. You know?
See, I never thought about adding analytics to your help. It's
simple, right?
Yeah, like even our FAQ.
Yes.
If we just add that, then that means we could do a better job in the onboarding process of describing what things are, or possibly in the messaging. So yeah, that's fantastic.
And you see your drop-offs too, right? So if people are getting to certain levels and are dropping off, that's huge. It's particularly if it's something like an install guide. The alarm bells need to be going off so fast, because you're like, why have they stopped installing? Right? There's something gone seriously wrong that's annoying them in some way, or, you know, and just simple techniques like that can add huge value. There we go. You can see the gears spinning here. I know this is radio.
No, I'm definitely adding analytics to our help and FAQ.
I should be charging for this.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about?
So one thing we're doing now is we do an awful lot with like I was saying, the Irish government. And the Irish government have Enterprise Ireland, the IDA, and other organisations. They have a program called the Lean program, where they pay for consultancy for 7 days for a Lean Start, and we would use that for kind of embedding Agile and whatnot. Lean Plus then is a 6 months transformation type program, and often Ammeon would do that for DevOps, doing a bigger project but significant savings. And a Lean Transform, you're transforming the whole organisation. To be fair, Ammeon can't even do that by ourselves. We have to join up with other consultancies to do those, because you're going into finance, you're going in across the board. But what we found when we were going out talking to people was there was something that they needed before that, and it was kind of just a introduction type course, and we call it the Accelerator program. It's kind of a fun little thing where it's a Kanban board with lots of different topics, and so learning about Agile, learning about Scrum, learning about Kanban, learning about DevOps, learning about Lean Start, and all the rest of it. And I get people for usually over half a day to go and prioritize their own board, right? Take ownership, give them the permission to do that, and then say, so this is what you want to learn, and then burn down that just as you would. And if they want to learn about Kanban, show them using their own work during the day as an example of the cycle time and how to measure WIP and that's Little's Law, or Scrum and the burn down and whatnot. And so we're using that as a precursor to the Lean Start, Lean Plus, and Lean thing, and so we're still learning, and it's Lean. Using Lean startup techniques, so we've sent out flyers to people that we know who are giving us review and feedback to improve that and keep growing it up. So it's still Agile in Ireland is in a very interesting place. Some of the big enterprises have done it. A lot of the American companies have had it enforced, dropped in on top of them. You and I know this one well.
Which doesn't always work.
No.
If there's not buy-in.
No.
As with any major initiative in a large company.
Precisely.
Or even a small company, really.
Precisely. And where we're seeing an awful lot of work now is the regulated industries. And that's a really interesting place to be, because those industries, their natural reaction was, because one of the Agile principles was working software over comprehensive documentation. And they read that and went, we need comprehensive documentation. There is no over.
Which is great while you're writing documentation for months as you've got a bug out there that's critical and you're just leaving it there because you can't fix it until you've done the documentation.
Precisely. But they're now coming around to realizing that their competitors have found ways to achieve both, get that bug fixed while getting documentation written to a sufficient level so that you can pass your audit, you can pass your compliance, you can pass your quality control. And that's where the big piece of work is still working ahead. And then the last piece of work that's doing an awful lot now is DevOps is slowly kicking off, particularly in the large enterprises now. DevOps was where the development teams were accelerating, handing it across to the operations team, who are traditionally delivering once every 2 years. Suddenly they now had to deliver once every 2 weeks. And went, which one of this 52 or 104 do you want us to actually install and maintain and look after? And so working with that, it's really interesting. It's a very interesting space right now to see how the mindsets are shifting. Meanwhile, the developers are going, yeah, that was 2001. The entire technology stack has moved on and you guys are behind the curve.
As always.
And that's developers.
That's the way it'll be.
Yeah, good stuff.
So for any people in startups that are listening, what one thing should they do today?
What one thing should they do today? Get out of the building. Very simple. Just go and get out of the building, go talk to people, and let that person not be your mother or any form of blood relative. Find somebody that is a persona, that is a customer you're hoping to target, right? And listen to them. Shut up and listen to their problems.
And here's a good piece of advice. If you feel too awkward to do it, can you even remember what somebody at a coffee shop looked like who you talked to yesterday? Yeah. You can't. Yeah. So they're not going to remember you, even if you make a fool of yourself. Yeah. So who cares?
Who cares is right.
You're going to learn something. Yes. And that's the most important thing.
Correct. That's exactly right.
And who should contact you if they're interested in Ammeon's service?
Look, if you're doing software development and you need just even a fresh set of eyes, I think it's worth giving us a shout.
Okay.
We go in and we have a cup of coffee, and a lot of the time, we might say, you need to be focused in a more relevant area, or sometimes you're doing just fine. Don't panic.
Nice.
Keep going. Do you know what I mean? And then where we try, and again, because of our work with Enterprise Ireland, we feel like we're doing a service for the country, for Ireland. And so we would try and shape all our programs so that Enterprise Ireland would subsidise up to 50% of anything that we do, which makes consultancy services affordable for groups that otherwise couldn't afford it.
Oh.
Yeah, so that really helps.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I have to keep that in mind. How can people reach you?
So if you go to robert.healy@ammeon.com, that'll get me, or www.ammeon, but that's with 2 M's and 1 N.
I'll add links in the description.
Then you can find us, no problem at all.
Cool. And if you're in Dublin, make sure to attend Agile-Lean Ireland.ie's event,
Yes.
which is in 126 days. Am I remembering that right?
Crikey, you're very good. I know that our early birds are just about to sell out, that our call for speakers are finishing up on the 30th of November, and it's going to be on in April, the 25th and 26th of April.
You won't be disappointed.
No, we make sure that we put on a good show.
It is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's definitely good. So thank you very much for joining us, Rob. And it's a pleasure to talk to you as always. And I learned something.
Good.
As I always do every time I talk to you.
And me too. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.